this is Melissa with the Sweetery Miami, and welcome to my kitchen. Today, everybody, I have a very special recipe to share with you. It's actually one of my most popular ones. I normally would not share this recipe with anybody, but it has become so popular that I can't keep up with all of the orders that I'm getting for this particular cake, so I'm putting it out there for everyone to be able to enjoy. So this cake that we're gonna be making today is called Coquito Cake. So coquito is the Latin version of eggnog that we make out in the Latin Caribbean countries like Cuba, Dominican Republic, and of course, Puerto Rico. They have wonderful coquito. So I have a great recipe for you guys that has to do obviously with the main ingredient of the dish, which is going to be coquito, the eggnog, coquito. And if you click on the little expansion box down below the video, you will be able to get that as well as the ingredients that you're gonna need to be able to make the cake itself. So just a little bit of knowledge as far as to what coquito is. If you're allergic to coconut, this is not the recipe for you. But if you love coconut, if you revel in coconut, this is perfect for you to be able to enjoy for yourself, with your family, and any time of the year really. You don't have to do it just during the holidays. So let's get to it.
So now that your cake is completely baked, and of course you have to let it cool, it's time to make the buttercream that we're going to use to fill it and to top the cake. So you're going to use 1 cup of confectioner's sugar along with your shortening and your butter and your vanilla extract. You're going to put it in your stand mixer and you're going to whip it till it gets nice and fluffy. Once the yellow turns very pale and you can see that it's getting really nice and fluffy, you're going to start to add in the rest of the confectioner's sugar, 1 cup at a time. Now in between this process, what you're going to want to do is scrape down the sides of the buttercream so that way you can pick up any of the bits and pieces that get left on the bottom of the bowl that the whisk attachment will not pick up unless you scoop it up from the bottom first. Then we're going to change from the paddle attachment to the whisk attachment to really add some volume and air to this buttercream. Now it's time to prepare the cakes themselves. Now I like to bake them the day before, freeze them, and then let them come to room temperature naturally inside of the Ziploc bags so that way they can retain their moisture. Since this cake has so much sugar in it, notice how in the middle it almost looks like a donut, and that's called sinking. When that happens, it's not a big deal. You're just going to need to grab your knife and you're going to want to level the top off. Now each of these 6-inch rounds are so tall that I can actually cut them in half and I can form 2 separate layers off of each cake, and that's great for a nice tall cake, which is what we're going to have here with this one. Now that all of the layers of cake have been cut in half, it's time to fill the cake. I'm going to use some shredded coconut as well as our prepared buttercream made with real vanilla bean. So good. And the way that you're going to fill it is you're going to put the buttercream down first. If you have an offset spatula, guys, this is really the best way to do it. If you have just a flat spatula, that's fine too. That just makes your life a lot easier. And if you have a cake turner, even better. That does the majority of the work for you. So you're going to spread the buttercream on each layer of cake, and then you're going to top it off with some shredded coconut. Something you can do with this is you can actually toast the coconut, which gives it a more nutty flavor. This one is just going to stay the way it is. You're going to go ahead and repeat the process with every layer of cake till you get to the top layer. Now we've gotten to the top layer, and it's time to start to top and buttercream the entire cake all the way around. So the first thing you're going to do is grab a nice big dollop of buttercream. Here you really want to be as generous as possible. And then you want to grab that offset spatula, and you want to start to spread that buttercream right over the top of the cake. Now the way that you smooth it out, the trick is to hold the spatula in place at an angle while you turn the cake turner. It makes it so much easier to do this, and it spreads out nice and evenly on the top, and it forms a nice smooth layer. Once the top has been completed, don't worry about having to clean off the sides of that, because that's actually going to help you on the sides of the cake. It's going to add that extra little buttercream up there that you need. So you're going to grab some more on the tip of your spatula, and you're going to generously spread it all across the sides of the cake. Don't skimp out on this, because when you pull this from the cake is when you start getting all those crumbs in it. You don't want crumbs in this layer. Once you're spreading it all the way around, you want to make sure that any kind of cake areas that are still exposed, you go back with your spatula and just rub some more buttercream right on. Now it's time to grab our bench scraper, and we're going to clean the tray itself, because we want to get rid of any chunks or little pieces of crumb that might be left over, because we don't want it to get on the cake as we clean it. So the bench scraper is something that we use to smooth out the buttercream on the cake. So you're going to take the bench scraper, you're going to put the flat end on the bottom of the cake tray, and then turn your turner and just leave the bench scraper where it is, and it's going to start to pull away all that excess buttercream that we added to the cake. Now it's time to level off the top. Very simple. Just shave it down with an angled spatula, and you're all set. Time to put it in the chiller. Now, while the cake is chilling for about 20 minutes or so, we're going to take out the fondant that we're going to use to create the poinsettia on the top. And we're going to use a little bit of cornstarch that we're going to put on the counter as well as on the rolling pin and the top of the fondant. Once you've rolled it out to the desired thickness, you're going to take your cookie cutters. I have these that are in the shape of leaves, which are really convenient, or if not, you can use an X-Acto knife to cut them out and you can freehand them. And you're just going to press down all over the fondant. Now I have two different sizes. I've got the large size, and then I have one that looks like 3 little leaves put together, which helps to create that smaller portion in the center of the poinsettia of the new leaves that are starting to grow out. So once we clean up the excess fondant, all we have left are the leaves, as you can see here. And now we're going to want to start to add some detail to these leaves. So I have this veining tool. All it is like a little pointed stick that's made out of plastic. You guys can pick these up at your local craft store. And it's just a matter of pulling it through the middle of the leaf and then adding tiny little drops of leaf centers, almost like the little veins that are coming out. You just need to pull from the center out and it'll create that pretty effect. Now, in order to be able to give these leaves some more life as well, I'm using small bowls to prop them up inside of, and if you notice how the end of the leaf kind of hangs off, you're going to see how pretty it's going to look once we pull the whole thing together on the top of the cake. So after you finish veining each of the leaves, I also recommend to take a paper towel, one that has a nice rough texture to it, and take the leaf and press it lightly onto the paper towel itself. What this is going to do is it's going to add that additional little bit of texture. It looks like the additional veining off of the leaves, and it looks really pretty when you see it up close. We're going to set these leaves aside, and now it's time to decorate the bottom edge of the cake. Now, if you notice, it is not perfectly buttercreamed. I don't want it to be perfect because this is a very rustic looking cake. So what we're going to do to add some texture is we're going to take the rest of that leftover shredded coconut and we're going to press it into the bottom third of the cake and also have some of that drip onto the cake board itself. That's going to add a really nice bit of dimension. It's also going to add a nice bit of texture when you're eating the cake as well, and it's just going to be absolutely gorgeous and have that whole winter rustic wonderland look. Once all of the sides have been covered, now you don't have to take it a third of the way up, you can take it a little higher, but I personally like the way that this looks. It's fantastic. You're going to want to take a dry paper towel and you're going to clean the cake tray itself. You don't want to leave a bunch of straggled pieces all the way around. You want to make it look as nice and clean as possible. And now it's time to work on the top. Now I purchased this little canister that's got some different chambers in it with all different types of sprinkles. There is some crystallized sugar, there's some sugar nuggets in both silver and in gold, as well as some really pretty sprinkles. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to use the gold sugar dust up on top first to kind of give it a really pretty shimmer, but that it won't be too intrusive when I put the leaves of the poinsettia on top. And then I'm going to enhance it as well with a little bit of the silver nuggets, and I'm going to do that just around the top edge of the cake. I also decided to take some of those same silver nuggets and put them into that area where I have all of the shredded coconut towards that base of the cake, and it adds a little bit more dimension and it also adds a bit of sparkle, which makes it look really pretty. Now's the fun part. We start to build out the poinsettia. So we're going to take our flat leaves and we're going to dust off any of that excess cornstarch that we used while we were building them out. And we're going to put them almost like in a little star pattern up on top. Poinsettias have very flat bottom leaves on the flower, and they have 5 of them. So if you notice, I have the 5 flat leaves. Now, of course, this is fondant, and fondant does get a little soft. So as I was dusting this one off, the tip of it broke off, but that's okay because that's going to get covered by the ones that are the wavy pieces that we used inside of the bowl to give them that little bit of movement. Once you test out all the pieces and you know where they're going to go, you can grab a little bit of food gel. Fondant is great also with some sugar water to paste them all together. You just don't want to use a ton of it. But what I'm going to do is to be able to pull everything together and to add those last little leaves that are on the top middle part of that flower is I'm going to use a yellow piece of fondant that I'm going to roll into a little ball and use some of that gel that I've got to adhere it directly to the center of the flower. Now that's also going to act as the pedestal for the smaller leaves to make them look elevated. And we're also going to use a little bit more of that yellow fondant to add the little balls on the very top. Our coquito cake is finally complete. The poinsettia is all ready to go. I added additional sugar crystals to the top of it to make it glisten. There's our delicious coconut down on the bottom, this gorgeous rustic buttercream, and then I also added some additional sugar pearls in between the leaves to give a little bit more dimension and texture. Thank you so much for visiting us today, guys, here at the Sweetery Miami. I hope that you make this coquito cake all of your own. Remember to give me a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Click that little bell to make sure that you are notified next time we have a wonderful video for you. And have a Merry Christmas.